Hello everyone, welcome back to Indian Writing in English. We are moving on to the story Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. In the last class, we have had an introduction about Jhumpa Lahiri, her biography, her works, etc. We have seen that she is an American immigrated Indian, and most of her stories are about immigrant experiences. So today we are starting the story itself. Lesson 2 actually. Okay, let us move on to the story. The Interpreter of Maladies tells about a day in the lives of Mr. and Mrs. Das, who is an American Indian couple who visits India with their children Ronnie, Bobby and Tina. They hire a middle-aged tourist guide, Mr. Kapasi, as their driver. So this is the background of the story when the story starts. Now let us see the summary of para first, then para 2, para 3 and 4 and 5, like that. Mr. and Mrs. Das were arguing about who will take their little daughter Tina to the toilet. Mr. Das reminded her that it was he who had given the girl her bath the night before. So, Mrs. Das took Tina reluctantly to the restroom. Mr. Kapasi observed Mrs. Das taking Tina to toilet. He noted that she was not holding her hand. She was not holding the girl's hand while they walked to the restroom. So that is the first paragraph of the story, which introduces the characters, their background, etc. Moving on to para 2. Mr. and Mrs. Das were on their way to see the Sun Temple at Konark. Mr. Kapasi was a tourist guide who picked them up from the hotel Sandy Villa. In less than 5 minutes, they started from the hotel. The little girl, Tina, said that she wanted to go to toilet. Kapasi saw that the couple were young, perhaps not even 30. They looked like Indians, but were dressed like foreigners. Mr. Kapasi was usually assigned to foreigners because he knew English. So, Mr. and Mrs. Das were on their way to see the Sun Temple at Konark, and Mr. Kapasi was a tourist guide. So, both these characters were being introduced. The couples were not even 30. They looked like Indians in their appearance, but they were foreigners. They dressed like foreigners. Mr. Kapasi was usually assigned because he knew English. Then, while waiting, next para 3 and 4, while waiting for Mrs. Das to return, one of the boy, Ronnie, becomes interested in a goat that came nearby. Mr. Das tells him not to play with it. Kapasi was a man of 46. He chatted with Mr. Das while he got an occasion. When Kapasi asked whether they left India as a child, Mr. Das replies that they were both born in America. Now their parents are living in India. Every 2 years, the Das family visited their parents. While they were talking, Tina returned. Mr. Das asked her, "Where is Meena?" Meena is the first name of Mrs. Das. Kapasi felt or feels strange. Kapasi feels that it is strange Mr. Das refers to his wife's name when speaking to the little girl. So, from this statement, we assume that Kapasi had observed that there is a distance between the distance in the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Das. Mr. Das refers to his wife's name when speaking to the little girl. After a while, Mrs. Das joined them. So just to comment on this opening of the story. The story is presented in the third person narrative. You know what is third person narrative? Third person, first person. Mr. and Mrs. Das and 3 children are going to a tour to Sun Temple at Konark. Kapasi, a middle-aged man, is their driver. Story mostly presents the point of view of Kapasi. Kapasi observes this couple. He knows English and talks to them to know their background. Mr. and Mrs. Das were Anglo-immigrated Indians. Kapasi senses a distance in the relationship between the husband and wife. So we will stop here and continue in the next class.